Today I'm going to give you 5 ways to make your D&D character instantly more flavorful. Tip number 1 is start out by defining your character's nature. Basically, if nothing had ever happened to them in their lives, what would be their default personality? This is the nature side of nature and nurture, and it really informs the core of our character. The nurture side is going to build off of top of that core, and it's really interesting. It's like chemistry, the way they mix. Would they naturally be more aggressive, or would they be more peacemakers? Would they be more ambitious, or would they be more about community? By defining these questions, we really give ourselves the base of our character, the most core aspect of them. Right after that, we're going to layer on top of it their nurture. What was their most defining experience, whether it was a single moment or whether it be an experience that was experienced over years and years and years? And then how did that experience change the way they think about the world, and then mix it with the nature? So it's like the most core is the nature, and then right above it is the nurture. An example of this is a character who is naturally generous, but they were raised as an orphan, but because they had to steal for their food, now how do those two things mix? They're both generous at their core, but they had to take to survive. What's their philosophy now? I think this is a really interesting way of approaching building your character because it gives it layers. You can have moments where you're getting deeper and deeper down into your character's personality, which gives us a lot of moments of storytelling reveals and also just storytelling moments. So to begin giving you an example, I'm going to use one of my characters that I've talked about many times, Fibonacci. Fibonacci at his core really wants people to be happy. However, he was raised in a criminal organization named the Shadow, where he was trained to be a manipulator and a blackmailer and a spy, essentially. So how these two things mix together is he would get the job done. He would manipulate who had to be manipulated, but interestingly, he would try and make it so they were happy in the manipulation. An example of this is he might go to a prisoner who is spending life in prison and says, hey, I can get you out, but you have to do this job for me. They're happy because they're getting out of prison. He's happy because he's getting the job done, but he's also doing it in such a way that it helps them. Now, to be clear, if he couldn't find a way for everyone to be happy, he'd still get the job done. That was just part of being raised in the Shadow. But if he could swing it, that nature part of him would come into play. Number 3 is defining their problem or their desire. What do they want? What do they need? What is keeping them from getting it, and how are they going about meeting that challenge? This is kind of where the adventure comes in. This is the third layer up. It's less about like the core of our personality, and it's more about, okay, this is the adventure we want to have. What's really cool is it alludes to the other two. It alludes to your nature, and it alludes to your nurture. So Fibonacci, being raised in the Shadow and wanting to please people, he was a people pleaser. He really wanted to perform well in the Shadow. So he would do whatever it took to be an efficient member of the Shadow organization. He was excellent at manipulation. He was excellent at blackmail. He was excellent at spying, and he took a lot of pride in that. Now, the only thing that would really break him out of that is if he made friends with the party and they became really close-knit, and then the Shadow was going against his friends, because then he cares about his community. And before, his only community was the Shadow, but now he has this new community, and if they face each other, now he has to make a choice. That's cool, interesting storytelling, and I really enjoyed that with Fibonacci. Number 4 is have a secret. Have something that your character really cares about keeping close to their chest, and have a reason why. Maybe they're ashamed of something that happened in the past. Maybe they're protecting themselves, or maybe they're protecting a loved one. Secrets are a ton of fun in roleplay because, one, it's going to give you those storytelling opportunities where there's a twist. We help our own DM have a dramatic moment. But that's not the only storytelling it enables. It also enables a moment of vulnerability for your character when they finally decide to share it with the party. That's a moment that says, okay, I trust you, and we are now officially close friends. And that's a cool moment to have with your party. But there's also some really cool things you can do with this to allude to that interesting backstory you've created. I find that if you have a really interesting backstory, the best way to show that backstory is to tease at it. I've been with players who just will sit down in the first sessions and they just tell you their whole backstory, all the drama, and it really takes away. But if you take your time and you slowly build the intrigue of your backstory, not only is it more interesting to roleplay yourself, but all your party members will be more interested in digging into it, and they'll find your character more compelling too. So for me, I'm really looking to mix my secret with my defining experiences that came from tip 2. Tip number 5 is to build a unique aesthetic, but to keep some of the aesthetic hidden only for the perceptive. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be eccentric. You can be, and that's a lot of fun. But for Fibonacci, he was a character that wanted to hide in plain sight. So he created an identity where he looked like a scholar. He had these horn-rimmed glasses. He had a scholar's coat, chalk on his fingers, carrying books. So he had a very defined look, and that's a rogue. That's a really unique look for a rogue. But if you were very perceptive, you would notice when he was changing his boots that you would see one of his pinky toes had been severed and cauterized professionally. You might not know why. It might be interesting interesting to perceive that, but what it does is it alludes to his backstory. The shadow would actually remove a piece of their initiate's bodies so that if the initiate ever broke the shadow's laws or betrayed them, they could use that severed body part to track them anywhere in the world, no matter what they looked like, which was really important to have for a changeling who can hide as anyone. I wanted to give the shadow the ability to find me no matter what. Kind of a bonus tip, or even a continuation of tip number 5, is have an item, no matter how mundane, that is extremely important to your character. This is something I've slept on and something I've been enjoying doing with my newer characters. For Fibonacci, I wouldn't say he had the strongest item, but he had a book where he would keep his secrets, and he was a linguist. He had the linguist feat, so he could make it into a code, and he would write in several different languages, so it'd be very hard to decipher. A stronger example of this is my more recent character, Eleonora. Eleonora has a harp bow, so it doubles as a harp as well as a bow that she can fire. And this is extremely important to her because her dad left when she was just a baby, and the only thing he left behind was that harp bow. Part of her story is she's trying to find her dad, and this harp bow is extremely important to her because it's her only connection to him. So she has this emotional attachment to this item. Really, the sky's the limit here. I saw someone who did a build where they were attached to a mannequin leg of all things, but it really goes to show that there are things important to you. Again, this is even stronger when you allude it to your backstory, when you allude it to your nature and nurture. So the reason I did this video this way is I really feel like these things layer on top of each other and they build from the ground up. A good aesthetic is fine, but a good aesthetic that leans into your secrets and your backstory and the interesting thing that makes your character is way better than just a cool look. And I think people usually stop at layer 2. They basically start from the top and start working their way down, and they get to layer 2 where they have a backstory, but they don't really go the next layer down, which is their nature. What would they naturally be? And I think that's kind of a slept on thing that you can do to make your characters improved, because if you define that and then mix it with your backstory, you get way different outputs. If you had one character whose nature was ambitious and one character whose nature was community driven, and then you mix it with a tragic backstory where their father was eaten by a vampire, whatever, then you're gonna get two way different outputs. One person is going to be vengeful and a kind of a lone wolf and solo. The other person might get a pack of people together to go hunt this vampire with them as a team. And so I think that nature is really important because it informs the rest of our character. That's just my take on how to make an interesting character. I'd love to hear your guys' tips. What do you guys do to make your characters more interesting? Let me know in the comments down below. But other than that, I hope you have yourselves a killer day, and I'll catch you on the next one. Later.